my name is Sri and today I'm going to be looking at an article called Reactions to Media Violence. It's in the Brain of the Beholder. So what I'm going to do is go through the aim, hypothesis, method, results, discussion and implications, and limitations and strengths of that report. To begin with, the aim was to determine differences between individuals with a propensity for violent behaviour and those without when exposed to media violence. This is both at a base level and then also after that exposure. The hypothesis, as seen in this diagram, is that there's no predisposition to violence and personality will lead to a lower level of aggression and violence in response, whereas a proclivity for that violence in personality will lead to a higher level of aggression and violence in response. The method that they've used, they've initially gotten 54 males and they've whittled that down to 25 based on the physical aggression score of the Buss-Perry aggression questionnaire. What they've then done after that is they've used personality and behavioural measures to get a baseline for these individuals using that multidimensional personality questionnaire and the attention network task. In particular, the negative emotionality as well as an inhibitory control factor are of great interest as we go forward. As far as these imaging conditions that they've used to look at this, to show this media, they've used a resting baseline where somebody relaxes, which is with their eyes open, a violent presentation that was R-rated, and then an emotional but non-violent presentation that was also R-rated. They've then gotten this positive and negative affective schedule, the PANAS, in response, a list of how the people felt at 5 minutes before, 10 minutes into, and at the end of each of these presentations, and they've taken the blood pressure from 5 minutes before and then every 5 minutes thereafter. Now they've taken PET imaging 1 time per imaging condition to determine the regions of interest in that brain. So what we've seen here underneath that is a diagram a table from the actual report, which shows those statistically significant differences between the aggressive and non-aggressive cohorts in negative emotionality and inhibitory control especially. So the results of this study showed that the aggressive group really showed a very big difference in that negative emotionality and inhibitory control at a baseline. So that correlates with the self-reported aggression on that questionnaire right at the start. And it also does correlate with some other studies that have been done. Again, the brain metabolic measures also showed group effects at a baseline, in particular the orbitofrontal cortex. The level of that was actually, the metabolism was lower in the aggressive group. The state reactivity differences in the PANAS were emerging from 10 minutes into these presentations onward. So in the violent presentation, the aggressive group were reportedly less upset and nervous, but more determined and inspired than the non-aggressive group, as well as compared to the emotional presentation. Here we see what I mean by when I say that the resting baseline, the orbitofrontal cortex, is actually not working, I suppose, as well in those aggressive individuals. However, both of those have led to an increase in glucose metabolism in that OFC. And as well, the blood pressure seen in these two groups across the viewing of violent media actually went down in the aggressive group instead of up as seen in the non-aggressive group. And this graph represents that exactly. That percentage change just across the time is really quite large, with the aggressive group being in red and non-aggressive in blue. So what does this mean? Essentially, though pre-selection based on those abnormal traits was really beneficial in seeing the differences in these individuals, and that finding of hypoactivity in the OFC of that aggressive group compared to the non-aggressive group is very important and something that's been seen a few times in different studies. So it's been supported by recent findings associated with that negative emotionality and inhibitory control in those with that high trait aggression, as this group were. And that's quite important because the OFC is responsible for the externalization, so the externalizing and impulsive behavior. So that not being quite so functional is probably quite relevant. That hypoactivation could be reflecting a desensitization or an inherent difference, and also supporting that desensitization hypothesis is those PANAS responses. Now, the blood pressure analysis really inferred this abnormal threat evaluation in the aggressive group compared to the non-aggressive, and it also, again, supported some prior study findings that were found. Pardon me. And kind of almost gave the impression of this satisfied urge being the reason why the blood pressure was coming down during that violent presentation, as was seen in that other study mentioned here in the PowerPoint. At the end of the day, they were able to prove their hypothesis, and as the quote says, the specificity of hypo response to violent content supports our assertion that the effects of violent media on individuals depends on theme-related traits, in this case aggression, and the brain of the beholder. Lastly, the limitations and strengths of this study. I think it was quite a strong study, but there was quite a glaring limitation, and that was the study size. Being a group of 25 males, no difference in background, age, or the rest of it, whilst that's very good for the case control study, which is the approach they've taken, I feel as though a cross-sectional study with more variation in gender, race, age, all that sort of thing would probably allow a wider sampling of the population, and then you could probably get some more informative inferences due to the results. That being said, as far as strengths go, they've really chose to consider another reason that consumption of violent media may cause societal issues, and they've looked at what array of factors would contribute to that end result of behaviour after the stimulus of violent media consumption, instead of just violent media causing violent behaviour. On top of this, they've really done a thorough application of these results to current literature and other studies, and that has really, I suppose, cemented it all together in that the studies going forward really need to be on what is causing these differences. Why are certain people reacting this way? All right, thank you very much.